The HOA president made one fatal mistake. She thought I was just another dumb cowboy. 6 months ago, Vivian Hartwell strutted onto my ranch in designer heels. The click, click, click on my wooden porch sounded like bullets loading. "This land is getting developed whether you like it or not," she announced, waving official papers. "Now there's $180,000 worth of fresh asphalt cutting through my pasture where wildflowers used to bloom. Every day I watch her crews pour more concrete, adding thousands to their investment. My neighbors think I've lost my mind. Why aren't you fighting? Call a lawyer." But here's what they don't understand. Sometimes the best revenge is letting your enemy think they're winning. While Princess Vivian's been playing queen, I've been doing homework in my grandfather's old papers. What I found is about to turn her victory parade into a nightmare she'll never forget. What would you do? Fight immediately or play the long game? Tell me below. Where are you watching from? Drop your worst neighbor horror story in the comments. My name's Ezra Mitchell, and this ranch has been in my family since 1923. 200 acres of prime Texas hill country where my grandfather taught me that land isn't just property. It's blood and bones and stories passed down through generations. The kind of place where meadowlarks still wake you at dawn and the evening air carries the sweet perfume of honeysuckle mixed with honest dirt. 3 years ago, I lost my wife Sarah to cancer. The medical bills hit us like a freight train, $400,000 even with insurance. Between that and property taxes that seem to double every year, I've been running cattle, boarding horses, and teaching weekend riding lessons to local kids just to keep the lights on. My daughter Melody's getting her law degree at UT, specializing in agricultural law. Smart kid, she saw this fight coming before I did. That's when Vivian Hartwell entered my life like a tornado in designer clothing. Picture a woman who pronounces agricultural like it's a 4-letter word. Former corporate lawyer from California who moved to Texas for what she calls investment opportunities. Drives a pristine white Tesla Model X that's probably never seen anything dirtier than a Starbucks parking lot. She's the self-appointed empress of estates at Magnolia Ridge. 200 identical McMansions where tech executives and retirees play dress-up cowboy on weekends. The first time she graced my porch with her presence, I heard her coming from 50 yards away. Click, click, click went those stiletto heels on my wooden boards, like a metronome counting down to trouble. The woman actually wore a business suit to visit a cattle ranch in August in Texas. "Mr. Mitchell," she announced without so much as a howdy, "we need to discuss your agricultural situation." Turns out my situation was that cattle occasionally produce what the county politely calls agricultural odors. Revolutionary discovery, right? Vivian had filed a formal complaint claiming my ranch violated health codes. It didn't, but proving that to bureaucrats cost me $3,000 in legal fees I couldn't afford, money that should have gone to fixing Sarah's medical debt. "Surely you understand," she continued, adjusting sunglasses that probably cost more than my monthly feed bill, "that modern communities require certain standards. Perhaps you should consider whether this lifestyle is truly sustainable in today's economy." The way she said lifestyle made raising cattle sound like running a crack house. But Princess Vivian was just warming up. Over the next 4 months, she became the star performer at every county planning meeting, always dressed like she was arguing before the Supreme Court. She'd stand during public comments and deliver these rehearsed speeches about agricultural restrictions and community health standards, throwing around legal jargon to intimidate anyone who might disagree. The complaints started rolling in like clockwork. Roosters crowing at dawn, apparently they're supposed to sleep in, excessive water usage, cattle drink water, shocking revelation, inadequate fence maintenance, it kept her constituents from wandering onto my land, and my personal favorite, unsightly farm equipment visible from the road. "Lady, it's called a tractor, not an eyesore." Each complaint triggered county inspections, more legal fees, and precious time away from actually running the ranch. The smell of diesel exhaust from county trucks became as familiar as morning coffee. Worse yet, she was dividing my community. Neighbors who'd known me for decades started avoiding eye contact at the feed store. "Property values," they whispered. "Standards, progress." "She's playing chess while you're playing checkers," my neighbor Buck warned one evening, the sweet smoke from his barbecue pit mixing with the evening chorus of cicadas. "That woman won't quit until she owns every acre from here to the highway." What Buck didn't know, what none of us knew yet, was that I'd been holding the winning hand all along. 3 weeks after Vivian's latest complaint about my unsightly farm equipment, she thought she'd found her smoking gun, a 1960s county survey showing a road easement cutting straight through my ranch. Tuesday morning, I'm mending fence when this fancy SUV rolls up, followed by a surveyor's truck. Out steps Princess Vivian in full lawyer costume, power suit, briefcase, and the kind of smile that makes rattlesnakes look friendly. The metallic clinks of surveying equipment cut through my peaceful morning like fingernails on a chalkboard. "Good morning, Ezra," she purred, all fake sweetness. "We're here to validate the emergency access easement. County records show a right-of-way from 1967. Behind her, the surveyor was already unloading gear that probably cost more than my truck. The mechanical whir of his equipment mixed with the distant lowing of my cattle, who were clearly unimpressed by the invasion. My prize bull Thunder stood about 50 yards away, snorting his displeasure like he understood exactly what was happening. Now most folks would have grabbed their shotgun and started hollering about trespassing. Me? I just tipped my hat and offered them sweet tea. Sometimes the best way to catch a liar is to let them keep talking. "Y'all go right ahead," I said, pulling out my phone. "Mind if I document this for my records?" The look on her face was priceless. She'd expected a fight and got a church social instead. You could practically see the gears turning in that calculating brain trying to figure out why the dumb cowboy wasn't screaming bloody murder. While they spent 3 hours measuring and marking my land like they owned it, I made some calls. First to my title company, then to Melody down at UT. The surveyor kept shooting glances my way, probably wondering why I was taking so many pictures and making so many notes. When you've been farming the same dirt for 3 generations, you learn that paperwork tells stories. And I had a feeling Vivian's fairy tale had some serious plot holes. The acrid smell of the surveyor's spray paint marking my fence posts made my stomach turn, but I kept that friendly smile plastered on my face. Sure enough, 3 days later, she filed a formal petition to activate her dormant easement. The woman hired a traffic engineer who produced a 40-page report about emergency response times, complete with color charts that would make NASA jealous, made it look real official. The county planning board scheduled a hearing for Thursday. Now, I'd learned something valuable during all those lawyer meetings about Sarah's medical bills. Dormant easements can only be reactivated if the original agreement was properly signed, sealed, and recorded. Most people don't know that technical detail. They assume old surveys are gospel truth. But when you've spent enough on legal fees to buy a new tractor, you pick up a few tricks. My title research came back the night before the hearing, and it was better than finding oil on your property. The musty smell of those old documents filled my kitchen as I spread them across Sarah's dining table. But what they revealed was pure gold. That 1967 easement was nothing but a preliminary survey authorization. Grandpa had agreed to let them measure the land for a possible road, but he never signed the actual easement documents. The whole thing was commissioned by some cattle baron who wanted to subdivide, but the deal died when land prices tanked. Best part? Buried in the surveyor's original handwritten notes, easement agreement rendered void if primary land use remains agricultural in perpetuity. The hearing was standing room only. Vivian marched in with 2 lawyers and her traffic engineer, ready to steamroll the board with statistics and legal jargon. She presented charts about compelling public interest, like she was arguing before the Supreme Court. When my turn came, I stood up with Grandpa's original documents and read that beautiful line about agricultural use. "Seems to me," I said, looking straight at her, "that as long as I'm raising cattle, there's no valid easement to activate." The board went into closed session. 20 minutes later, they shuffled back looking uncomfortable as cats in a dog kennel. "Mr. Mitchell," the chairman mumbled, "while we appreciate your documentation, community safety concerns outweigh individual property considerations. Motion passes 3-2. Vivian practically skipped out, her heels clicking victory on courthouse steps. But she missed something crucial. My daughter Melody sitting in back, scribbling notes and photographing every board member's face. That weekend, expensive catering smells drifted from her victory party while I sat on my porch, planning. Because here's what Princess Vivian didn't know. Melody had just discovered something in those courthouse records that was about to flip this whole game on its head. 2 of those board members who voted against me, they didn't just live in her subdivision. They were business partners in a development company that stood to make millions if my ranch got carved up. The real fun was about to begin. Armed with Melody's discovery about those corrupt board members, I figured I had Vivian cornered. Shows what I knew. That woman had more dirty tricks than a carnival shell game. Monday morning, I'm feeding cattle when my phone buzzes. County inspector, voice shaking like a chihuahua in a thunderstorm. "Mr. Mitchell, we need an immediate safety inspection. Federal highway safety violations have been reported." The peaceful smell of fresh hay should have started my day right. but something in his tone made my coffee taste like motor oil. When a bureaucrat sounds terrified, somebody with serious money is yanking his chain. Inspector Jenkins showed up Wednesday looking like he'd rather be getting a root canal. Behind him rolled a white Tesla, and out stepped our beloved HOA queen with a briefcase and an expression that could freeze hell over. "Inspector Jenkins," she announced, not bothering with pleasantries. "I trust you understand the federal implications of obstructing emergency vehicle access." Turns out Princess Vivian had escalated to the state level, claiming federal highway safety regulations required her easement. She'd hired some traffic engineer from Dallas who produced a study proving that emergency vehicles couldn't reach her subdivision fast enough without cutting through my ranch. The whole thing smelled fishier than a bait shop in August. Jenkins discovered violations that would have been hilarious if they weren't costing me money. Broken fence wire, a repair I'd literally just finished. Inadequate barn lighting. Apparently cows need streetlights now. And my personal favorite, unsecured agricultural chemicals, because I had a bag of cattle salt in my truck bed. Total repair cost, $25,000. Timeline, 30 days or they'd shut me down entirely. But here's something most folks don't know about fighting crooked inspectors. Independent professionals can override local findings if you're willing to pay for real expertise. Cost me $2,000, but my guy found that Jenkins had cited violations that didn't even exist in the county code. Half his safety concerns were made up on the spot. While I was drowning in paperwork, Vivian made her boldest move yet. Thursday morning, 6 a.m. sharp, the rumble of heavy equipment shattered the dawn silence. Bulldozers, dump trucks, and a steamroller rolled onto my land like Sherman marching through Georgia. I grabbed my camera and walked out there, boots crunching on gravel they'd already started dumping. The foreman, a weather-beaten guy named Pete, looked about as comfortable as a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. "Sorry, Mr. Mitchell," he shouted over diesel engines. "Got orders to start construction. Lady says all permits are good." That's when I made the smartest decision of this whole mess. I stepped back and let them work. Every shovelful of dirt, every load of gravel, every hour of labor they paid for was going to cost them double when this was over. See, there's a beautiful principle in construction law that most people never learn. If you build on someone's land without proper authority, you're liable for restoration costs plus damages. The bigger the project, the bigger the payback. I documented everything while the sweet morning air filled with diesel fumes and the sound of my peaceful ranch being carved up like a Thanksgiving turkey. My phone filled with evidence while Pete's crew unknowingly built the most expensive mistake of their careers. By Friday, they'd blocked my Cattle's Creek access. 50 head of confused livestock standing around while bulldozers destroyed their grazing land. The smell of trampled wildflowers mixed with hot asphalt made my stomach turn, but I kept smiling and taking pictures. That evening brought Vivian's most desperate move yet. She filed a restraining order claiming I'd threatened her workers. Her evidence? Security footage of me asking Pete to move equipment so my cattle could drink water. Judge Miller, who lived 3 houses down from her, granted the order without even hearing my side. Suddenly, I was legally banned from interfering with construction on my own property. But Saturday morning, Melody called with news that changed everything. "Dad," she said, voice practically vibrating with excitement. "I've been digging into Vivian's background. Her law license was suspended in California for stealing client money. She owes the IRS $47,000. And get this, the construction company, they're working without permits. The county never approved final construction documents. Here's the kicker. I had it all on video, Pete admitting he was just following orders. Vivian directing work without proper authority. Equipment operating on forged permits. Sunday evening, I sat on my porch listening to distant machinery covered by tarps, the air thick with disturbed earth and impending justice. Thunder stood at the fence line staring at the chaos like he was wondering what kind of idiot humans had taken over his pasture. What Vivian didn't know was that her construction crew had just become star witnesses in the biggest fraud case this county had seen in decades. And every dollar they spent was about to become evidence in my favor. With evidence of Vivian's forged permits in my back pocket, I thought I had her beat. Shows how much I knew about fighting a desperate sociopath with money and connections. Monday morning brought county trucks rumbling up my driveway, followed by that white Tesla like a vulture circling roadkill. Out stepped Vivian with a new inspector, a thin, sweaty man who kept checking his phone like he was expecting orders from headquarters. "Mr. Mitchell," he announced, "anonymous reports indicate dangerous livestock conditions and structural violations requiring immediate remediation." The morning should have smelled like dew and honest work, but instead it reeked of bought and paid for corruption. Vivian stood behind him wearing a smile that belonged in a horror movie, her manicured fingers drumming against her clipboard like she was keeping time to my downfall. Over 3 hours, they discovered violations that would have been comedy gold if they weren't so expensive. Weathered fence posts suddenly became structural hazards. My 1945 barn was now unsafe for livestock, and apparently giving free riding lessons to neighborhood kids made me an unlicensed commercial operation. Total cost to fix their imaginary problems, $45,000. Timeline, 30 days, or they'd seize my cattle for public safety. But here's something you learn fighting medical bills and government bureaucrats. When officials start making threats that sound too extreme, they're usually operating way outside their legal authority. Real inspectors follow procedures. Desperate ones make ultimatums they can't back up. My independent inspector found that half their citations violated state agricultural protection laws. Small family farms have specific protections against exactly this kind of harassment. Documentation beats intimidation every single time. While I was buried in paperwork, Vivian escalated to outright sabotage. Wednesday night, someone cut my fence lines and left gates open. Thursday morning, 12 cattle scattered across 3 counties, including Thunder, my $8,000 prize bull and the gentlest animal on the ranch. I spent the day chasing confused livestock with help from neighbors, the smell of diesel exhaust mixing with road dust as we herded cattle off highway shoulders and suburban lawns. Semi-trucks roaring past spooked animals made every minute feel like a disaster waiting to happen. Friday morning brought the call every rancher dreads. State trooper, voice heavy. "Mr. Mitchell, incident on Highway 290, one of your bulls." Thunder was gone, dead on impact with a delivery truck, the driver shaken but uninjured. Standing on hot asphalt next to my bull's body, stroking his still warm hide while the metallic smell of blood mixed with diesel fumes, something inside me snapped. Not my spirit, my restraint. The investigating trooper took photos while I made calls, but we both knew this was no accident. Fences don't cut themselves, and gates don't open by magic. That evening, Channel 8 News ran the story. Reporter Linda Martinez interviewed me right where they'd dragged Thunder off the road. "Do you believe this tragedy was preventable?" she asked. I looked straight into that camera. Thunder died because somebody thought they could break a rancher's spirit by killing what he loves. They just made the worst mistake of their lives. The story exploded online. 75,000 views in 12 hours, shared across agricultural sites nationwide. Comments flooded in from farmers sick of watching big money crush small people. But here's where Vivian's arrogance finally bit her. While she was celebrating Thunder's death at her Friday night wine club, I was in my grandfather's barn, going through every piece of paper he'd saved from the 1920s. And buried in a leather portfolio I'd never bothered opening was a document that changed everything. The original Agricultural Preservation Covenant from 1924, signed by the developer who'd later sold land for Vivian's subdivision. The covenant didn't just protect my ranch. It prohibited any non-agricultural development within 500 feet of my property line, which meant half of Vivian's precious subdivision was built on illegally developed land. Saturday morning, Melody called after reviewing the covenant with her professors. "Dad, this isn't just about stopping their road. If we enforce this covenant, we can challenge the legality of their entire development. We're talking about $2.3 million in potential property devaluations." Sunday evening, I sat where Thunder used to graze, the empty pasture quiet except for distant construction equipment covered by tarps. The smell of evening rain mixed with something else, the sweet scent of incoming justice. Vivian thought killing my bull would break me. Instead, she'd just given me the motivation to destroy everything she'd built. And thanks to my grandfather's foresight 90 years ago, I had the legal ammunition to do it. The real war was about to begin. That agricultural covenant from 1924 wasn't just a piece of old paper. It was a nuclear bomb with Vivian's name on it. But before I could detonate it, I needed to understand exactly what I was holding. Monday morning, Melody drove up from Austin with her agricultural law professor, Dr. Rebecca Santos, a sharp-eyed woman who'd spent 30 years fighting corporate land grabs. The smell of fresh coffee filled my kitchen as we spread Grandpa's documents across Sarah's old dining table, the morning light streaming through windows that had watched 3 generations of Mitchells defend this land. "Ezra," Dr. Santos said, adjusting her reading glasses, "this covenant is extraordinary. Most agricultural preservation agreements from the 1920s were informal gentlemen's handshakes. This one was drafted by a lawyer and properly recorded." She traced her finger along the faded ink of my great-grandfather's signature. It specifically prohibits any non-agricultural development within 500 feet of your ranch buildings. That includes residential subdivisions, commercial construction, and, she smiled, access roads. The implications hit me like lightning. Vivian's entire subdivision sat within that 500-foot boundary. Every house, every street, every perfectly manicured lawn was built in violation of a covenant that had been sitting in county records for 90 years. How is this even possible? I asked. Wouldn't developers have found this during title searches? Dr. Santos chuckled, a sound that reminded me of Sarah's laugh when she caught me doing something particularly clever. Agricultural covenants were often filed in different record books back then. Modern title searches focus on recent transactions and standard deed restrictions. Someone would have to specifically look for historical agricultural documents. Melody pulled out her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. Dad, I've been researching the original developer. His name was Hamilton Pritchard, and he owned 2,000 acres throughout this area in the 1920s. He sold your great-grandfather this specific parcel with the agricultural covenant because he wanted to preserve at least some working farmland. Here's the beautiful part, Dr. Santos continued. Restrictive covenants like this run with the land in perpetuity. They bind all future owners, whether they know about it or not. And because it was recorded in 1924, it takes legal precedence over any later developments. The musty smell of old documents mixed with the aroma of Melody's fresh brewed coffee as the full scope of our discovery sank in. This wasn't just about stopping Vivian's road. We could challenge the legality of her entire subdivision. What kind of damages are we talking about? I asked. Dr. Santos did quick calculations on Melody's laptop. If this covenant is enforced, every house built within the restricted zone becomes legally non-conforming. Property values would plummet overnight. We're looking at potential damages of $2.3 million across 47 homes. The power dynamic had just flipped completely. Instead of me fighting to keep my ranch, Vivian was now sitting on a multi-million-dollar legal time bomb that could destroy everything she'd built. But there's a risk, Dr. Santos warned. If we challenge the covenant and lose, you could face countersuits for tortious interference with property values. And agricultural covenants have been overturned before when courts decide economic development serves a greater public good. That's when I made the decision that would define everything that came next. Instead of rushing into court with our newfound weapon, I chose to let Vivian finish digging her own grave. We're going to let them complete that road, I announced. Melody nearly choked on her coffee. Dad, that's insane. What if they establish adverse possession? What if construction creates facts on the ground that override the covenant? Because, I said, looking out at Thunder's empty pasture, right now Vivian thinks she's winning. She's getting cocky, making mistakes, spending money she doesn't have. Let her invest everything she's got in this project. When she's in deepest, that's when we spring the trap. Dr. Santos nodded slowly. It's risky, but strategically brilliant. The more money and resources she commits to violating the covenant, the larger the damages become. And if she's operating on forged permits and borrowed money, she goes bankrupt when we win, I finished. The plan was dangerous, but elegant. For the next few weeks, I'd play the defeated rancher while Vivian poured money into construction. Meanwhile, we'd quietly build an airtight legal case with expert witnesses, historical documentation, and evidence of every covenant violation. Wednesday afternoon, I walked out to watch her construction crew laying the final sections of road. The acrid smell of hot asphalt cut through the autumn air, while Pete's workers unknowingly built the most expensive mistake in county history. The foreman waved at me like we were old friends. Should be finished by Friday, Mr. Mitchell. Real nice road when it's done. I just smiled and waved back. He had no idea he was paving the highway to Vivian's financial destruction. That evening, I called my insurance company about Thunder's death. The claim investigator was very interested to hear about construction equipment working near damaged fences. Very interested indeed. Friday night, I sat on my porch listening to celebration sounds drifting from Vivian's subdivision. The smell of expensive barbecue and champagne toasts carried on the evening breeze while she threw another victory party. Let her celebrate. In 3 weeks, when I walked into that courthouse with 90 years of legal precedent and a dead bull's blood on her hands, her victory would turn into the most expensive defeat in this county's history. Sometimes the best revenge is patience. With a 1924 covenant worth $2.3 million in damages burning a hole in my kitchen drawer, it was time to assemble the kind of legal army that would make Vivian's expensive lawyers wet their pants. Dr. Santos brought me my first secret weapon Tuesday morning. Judge Harold Brennan, retired after 40 years on the bench and meaner than a rattlesnake with hemorrhoids. the sweet smell of his pipe tobacco mixed with coffee as we spread battle plans across my kitchen table. "Son," he drawled, studying the covenant through glasses thick as Coke bottles. "This document is a masterpiece, ironclad language properly recorded, and it predates every stick of lumber in that subdivision. I'll testify for free." "Why no charge?" I asked. He chuckled like gravel in a cement mixer. "Because I'm tired of watching California carpetbaggers destroy Texas heritage. Consider it my farewell gift to common sense." Wednesday brought Professor Maria Gutierrez from UT's Environmental Law Clinic. She rolled up in a Prius that looked lost next to my pickup, but her passion for agricultural preservation was genuine as morning dew. The musty smell of law books seemed to follow her everywhere, like she'd been marinating in jurisprudence since birth. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, spreading case files across my table, "this could set precedent for agricultural protection statewide. My students need landmark cases, and struggling ranchers need top-tier lawyers. It's beautiful symbiosis. Here's something most folks don't know. Law schools hunt for cases that can establish legal precedent like prospectors hunt for gold. Students get real experience, professors get research material, and broke ranchers get million-dollar legal representation they could never afford." Thursday brought Sarah Mockingbird, a Comanche environmental lawyer who looked like she could scalp opposing counsel with her briefcase. She showed up in cowboy boots and a power suit, carrying legal weapons that had survived multiple courtroom wars. "Your covenant doesn't just protect farming," she explained, unrolling satellite photos. "Vivian's Road destroyed protected wetlands. That's federal territory now. Clean Water Act violations with $50,000 per day fines." The acrid bite of her industrial-strength coffee mixed with the sweet scent of multiplying legal damages. Every day Vivian's crew worked, they were digging deeper into federal violation territory. Friday transformed my barn into mission control for what we dubbed the Agricultural Defense Coalition. Word had spread through farming communities like gossip at a church social. Ranchers from 3 counties showed up with coolers, checkbooks, and enough righteous anger to power a small city. Buck arrived hauling a folder thick as a Bible. Got signatures from 200 agricultural operations. Every one of them ready to fight HOA overreach. The legal defense fund exploded overnight. $45,000 in 3 days, mostly crumpled $5 and $10 bills from farmers who understood that if rich folks could steal my land, nobody's ranch was safe. The smell of barbecue smoke mixed with diesel fumes from dozens of pickups turned my pasture into the world's most focused tailgate party. Weekend brought the technical cavalry. GPS surveyor Tommy Chen arrived with equipment that could probably guide NASA missions. The electronic symphony of his instruments created a soundtrack of precision as he documented every covenant violation with satellite accuracy. "Mr. Mitchell," Tommy announced, downloading data. "Their road violates the covenant boundary in 17 separate locations. Each violation carries separate damages and penalties." Environmental consultant Dr. James Yellowbird spent Monday documenting ecological destruction. The squelch of his boots in damaged marsh mixed with camera clicks as he photographed what Vivian's emergency access road had really accomplished. 2.3 acres of destroyed wetlands and $100,000 in federal restoration costs. But Tuesday brought the nuclear bomb, Melody's discovery of Vivian's financial house of cards. The HOA was broker than a preacher's promise. They'd mortgaged their entire future. $400,000 borrowed against property assessments, betting everything on crushing one stubborn cowboy. "Dad," Melody said, practically vibrating with excitement, "when we win, their subdivision enters bankruptcy. The bank seizes every house. Residents lose their equity overnight. Vivian doesn't just lose, she destroys everyone who trusted her." Wednesday evening, our legal dream team gathered for final war planning. The smell of Sarah's legendary apple pie filled the kitchen, while 8 of Texas's sharpest legal minds plotted the most spectacular property rights victory in county history. Timeline, Professor Gutierrez announced. Monday, file covenant enforcement. Tuesday, emergency construction injunction. Wednesday, federal environmental violations reported. Thursday, personal fraud charges against Vivian. Friday, watch her world burn. Judge Brennan tamped his pipe thoughtfully. "You're not just beating them, you're creating a cautionary tale that'll protect ranchers for generations." Thursday morning, I stood where thunder used to graze, watching Vivian's crew pour final asphalt on their beautiful, expensive, completely illegal road. The sweet scent of honeysuckle mixed with hot tar, soon to become the most costly perfume in Texas history. Friday brought the most satisfying sound in the world, courthouse papers being notarized. Monday morning, justice would finally get her day in court. Monday morning should have been my victory lap into that courthouse, but instead, I woke up to chainsaws and the smell of burning wood. Vivian had discovered our legal strategy, probably through that courthouse clerk who lived in her subdivision, and gone full scorched earth. My century-old oak trees lay scattered like fallen soldiers, reduced to stumps and sawdust by midnight vandals. The acrid smoke from burning brush piles mixed with morning dew, creating a fog that burned worse than the rage building in my chest. These weren't just trees, they were landmarks that had shaded my grandfather's cattle before Vivian was even born. Professional job, Sheriff Martinez said, documenting the destruction. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. But here's where Vivian made her first mistake. She assumed I'd crumble under pressure like most folks do. Instead, I called my insurance company and filed a claim for $50,000 in mature tree replacement costs. Then I had Tommy Chen GPS map every stump, creating a digital crime scene that would hold up in federal court. While I was turning vandalism into evidence, Vivian hired Marcus Blackwood from Dallas, the kind of lawyer who charges $800 an hour and has never met a property dispute he couldn't bulldoze. He rolled up Tuesday in a Mercedes worth more than most houses, wearing a suit that probably required its own insurance policy. Blackwood filed a personal lawsuit claiming my media interviews had caused Vivian severe psychological trauma. She wanted $100,000 for emotional distress, plus a gag order to stop me talking to reporters. The legal papers cut my hands like razor blades as I read through 40 pages of legal theater designed to intimidate. That's when I made my countermove. Instead of hiring expensive lawyers to fight their lawsuit, I called Linda Martinez at Channel 8 and handed her copies of everything. Want an exclusive on how HOA presidents use frivolous lawsuits to silence ranchers? Wednesday morning, Linda's story went viral. HOA Queen sues rancher for hurt feelings after killing his bull. The comment section exploded with outrage from viewers who understood exactly what kind of legal bullying they were witnessing. But Vivian's desperation was just getting started. Wednesday afternoon, she tried bribing County Clerk Jenny Morrison to lose the original 1924 covenant documents, offered $5,000 cash to accidentally misfile papers or claim water damage in storage. Jenny recorded the whole conversation and brought me the evidence Thursday morning. The smell of fresh coffee couldn't mask the stench of felony corruption as we listened to Vivian's voice offering cash for document destruction. "She's panicking," Jenny said, hands shaking as she stirred sugar. "But this is tampering with public records, federal crime territory." I had Melody immediately file copies of the covenant with 3 different government agencies: County Records, State Archives, and Federal Agricultural Preservation Office. By Thursday afternoon, those documents were backed up in more places than a paranoid prepper's food supply. That evening, someone broke into my truck with surgical precision. No broken glass, just my laptop with covenant photos missing. The lingering smell of expensive cologne told me this wasn't random meth heads looking for loose change. But here's what they didn't know. I'd already uploaded everything to cloud storage and given copies to all 5 local news stations. Stealing my laptop was like trying to stop a river by catching one drop of water. Friday brought Vivian's most vicious attack, a planted newspaper story claiming I was an unstable extremist who'd threatened construction workers. Anonymous sources painted me as a dangerous drunk making violent threats about dealing with trespassers permanently. The article made me sound like a militia nutjob instead of a rancher defending his land. Fake social media accounts appeared overnight, spreading lies about livestock diseases and safety hazards. Parents started pulling kids from my riding lessons. This time, I didn't get mad. I got smart. While Vivian was busy destroying my reputation, I was documenting every lie for a massive defamation countersuit. Melody traced the fake accounts to IP addresses in Vivian's subdivision, all created during HOA board meetings when she was supposedly discussing community concerns. "Dad," Melody said Friday night, showing me digital evidence, "she's building our racketeering case for free. Every lie, every bribe, every criminal act. It's all time-stamped and traceable." Saturday brought the sweetest news yet. The construction company was suing the HOA for $180,000 in unpaid bills. Vivian had spent their entire budget on lawyers and bribes, leaving contractors holding worthless IOUs. "Lady's been writing checks her association can't cash," Pete the foreman told me when he stopped by to apologize for the tree damage. "My boss is putting liens on every house in that subdivision." Sunday morning, I surveyed the devastation from my porch: tree stumps, scattered sawdust, Thunder's empty pasture scarred by tire tracks. the sweet smell of honeysuckle mixed with lingering chainsaw exhaust. But I was smiling wider than a Cheshire cat. Every desperate move Vivian made was creating evidence for federal conspiracy charges. Every bribe attempt was being recorded. Every lie was being documented. She thought she was destroying my case by destroying my property. Instead, she was building the most airtight criminal prosecution this county had ever seen. Monday morning, we weren't just going to court, we were going to make legal history. With a federal conspiracy case building against her, you'd think Vivian would have backed down. Shows how little I knew about cornered sociopaths with million-dollar legal bills and nothing left to lose. Monday morning brought her nuclear option. Former Texas Attorney General Robert Ashford, a man who charged $1,000 an hour and had enough political connections to make federal judges nervous. His arrival at the courthouse felt like watching a gunslinger ride into town, all sharp suit and calculated menace. Ashford immediately filed a motion to dismiss our case based on statute of limitations for historical deed restrictions. He claimed that agricultural covenants from the 1920s were racially discriminatory relics, designed to exclude minorities from property ownership, making them unenforceable under modern civil rights law. The legal papers hit my kitchen table like a bomb blast, their sharp edges cutting through morning air thick with coffee and dread. 40 pages of constitutional law designed to turn my agricultural protection into a racist conspiracy. "It's brilliant and disgusting," Dr. Santos said, reviewing the motion. "He's trying to make you look like a bigot for defending a century-old farming covenant." But Ashford wasn't done rewriting history. Tuesday brought a federal lawsuit claiming our covenant enforcement violated the Fair Housing Act. Suddenly, my attempt to save the family ranch became a civil rights violation punishable by massive federal fines. Wednesday escalated to psychological warfare. Anonymous flyers appeared throughout the county. Ezra Mitchell, dangerous extremist using racist laws to threaten families. My mailbox filled with hate mail from people who'd never met me, but were convinced I was some kind of agricultural supremacist. The acrid smell of burning paper filled my yard as neighbors disposed of the flyers in disgust, but the damage was spreading. Local businesses started getting calls demanding they stop serving me. The feed store manager apologetically told me some customers were threatening boycotts if he continued selling to that racist rancher. Thursday brought the coordinated social media blitz. Hundreds of fake accounts appeared overnight, flooding agricultural forums and local Facebook groups with posts about my extremist agenda. They photoshopped images of me at non-existent militia meetings and created fake quotes about keeping undesirables out of our community. The digital assassination was surgical and professional. Whoever Vivian hired understood how to destroy reputations in the internet age. The metallic taste of adrenaline filled my mouth as I watched my life's work get shredded by algorithms and anonymous trolls. But here's where Vivian's desperation betrayed her. She was moving so fast and spending so much money that she was leaving digital fingerprints everywhere. While she was busy destroying my reputation, Melody and her computer science friends were tracing every attack back to its source. "Dad, look at this," Melody said Friday morning, her laptop screen glowing with network analysis charts. Every fake account, every coordinated post, every digital attack, they're all routing through the same server farm in Austin. Professional social media manipulation service, probably costing $50,000 a week. More importantly, the payment records showed direct transfers from Vivian's personal accounts. She wasn't just orchestrating the attacks, she was personally funding a criminal conspiracy to destroy my reputation through fraud and defamation. Friday afternoon brought her most desperate gambit yet. Vivian convinced Channel 12 to run an investigative report claiming I was using agricultural preservation laws to hide a white supremacist compound. The reporter, an ambitious young man who clearly hadn't done his homework, presented evidence that my riding lessons were actually paramilitary training sessions. The smell of fresh coffee turned bitter as I watched myself portrayed as some kind of domestic terrorist on the evening news. They showed aerial footage of my ranch with ominous music, making my barn look like a fortress and my cattle like camouflage for sinister activities. But Vivian had finally overplayed her hand. Saturday morning, Linda Martinez from Channel 8 called with fury in her voice. "Ezra, Channel 12 just ran a story claiming you're a terrorist based on anonymous tips that we traced back to Vivian's PR firm. This is criminal defamation on a massive scale." By Saturday afternoon, the story was collapsing. Social media users who actually knew me were posting videos of my riding lessons, 8-year-old girls learning to care for horses, not paramilitary training. The contrast between reality and Vivian's fabricated narrative was so stark that even her supporters started questioning what they'd been told. Sunday brought the final nail in her coffin. The construction company filed a $300,000 lawsuit against the HOA for fraudulent contracts and non-payment. Pete the foreman had documented every conversation, every forged permit, every lie Vivian told to keep his crew working. "She's broke," Pete told me Sunday evening, the smell of barbecue smoke drifting from his truck as we talked by my fence line. "Been writing bad checks for weeks. My boss wants criminal charges filed for theft of services." Sunday night, I sat on my porch surrounded by the wreckage of Vivian's scorched earth campaign. Tree stumps dotted my property like tombstones, fake news stories circulated online like digital poison, and my reputation had been dragged through every gutter between here and Austin. But as the sun set over Thunder's empty pasture, painting the sky the color of justice delayed, I realized something beautiful. Vivian had committed so many crimes trying to destroy me that she'd accidentally built the most comprehensive criminal case in county history. Monday morning, we weren't just going to court to enforce an agricultural covenant. We were going to watch a corrupt HOA president get arrested for conspiracy, fraud, bribery, defamation, and about 12 other felonies. Sometimes the best strategy is letting your enemy destroy themselves while you document every mistake. Monday morning dawned crisp and clear, the kind of October day that makes you believe in justice and second chances. By 8 a.m., the courthouse parking lot looked like the state fair had relocated, news vans, satellite trucks, and more pickup trucks than a championship rodeo. Inside, standing room vanished faster than free beer at a barn raising. The gallery packed with ranchers in their Sunday best, reporters clutching cameras like lifelines, and Vivian's subdivision residents looking like they'd rather be getting root canals. The overworked air conditioning couldn't compete with 200 bodies, and nervous sweat mixed with courthouse disinfectant created an atmosphere you could cut with a dull knife. Judge Patricia Williams took the bench at 9 a.m. sharp, her black robes flowing like storm clouds over wheat fields. She'd driven down from Austin specifically for this case. Word had spread through legal circles that this would be the agricultural rights case of the decade. Vivian's entrance rivaled a presidential motorcade, Mercedes, Bentley, BMW, and a trailing SUV full of what looked like private security. She swept into the courtroom wearing a designer suit worth more than most monthly salaries, her heels clicking arrogance on marble floors like a countdown to judgment. Ashford opened with theatrical brilliance, painting me as a relic using discriminatory covenants to exclude minorities from the American dream. His voice echoed through the chamber as he quoted constitutional law, making my family's ranch sound like a monument to segregation disguised as farmland. "Your Honor," he declared, gesturing toward Vivian like she was defending civil rights, "this covenant represents everything America has fought to overcome. Racial exclusion masquerading as agricultural preservation." The gallery stirred uncomfortably. Even knowing it was legal theater, his words carried weight in a room full of people who'd lived through real civil rights struggles. Then Professor Gutierrez stood with my grandfather's leather portfolio, her voice clear as morning air. "Your Honor, we present the complete historical record, including documentation Mr. Ashford mysteriously omitted." She pulled out photographs of Grandpa with his Mexican ranch hands, letters thanking him for providing jobs to immigrant families, testimonials from 3 generations of workers welcomed regardless of race or nationality. "This covenant wasn't about exclusion," she said, voice rising like Sunday hymns. "It was about preservation, preserving working land where families of all backgrounds made honest livings." Judge Williams studied the documents. "Mr. Ashford, did your research uncover this historical context?" Ashford's confident smile flickered like a dying light bulb. "Your Honor, anecdotal evidence doesn't override discriminatory covenant structures." Judge Brennan stood in the gallery, his voice carrying 40 years of judicial authority. "Your Honor, may I approach as friend of the court?" His testimony surgically dismantled Ashford's constitutional arguments while explaining the difference between housing discrimination and agricultural preservation. Every word landed like hammer blows on an anvil. But the real fireworks started when Melody took the stand with a laptop and enough USB drives to choke a computer. "Your Honor, we have evidence of criminal conspiracy to defraud this court and destroy my father's reputation." Dead silence as she played Jenny Morrison's recording of Vivian attempting bribery. The metallic sound of corruption echoed through the chamber like confessions in a public square. Then came the digital evidence. Time-stamped social media attacks, payment records for fake news, server logs proving coordinated defamation. Each revelation hit like artillery shells, the audience gasping as Vivian's criminal empire unfolded in real time. Judge Williams's face darkened like prairie thunderstorms. Miss Hartwell, care to respond to these allegations? Vivian stood, her designer composure finally cracking. Your Honor, this is clearly coordinated extremist persecution. Ma'am, Judge Williams interrupted. You're under oath. Choose your next words very carefully. FBI agent Sarah Chen rose from the back like an avenging angel, badge glinting in fluorescent light as she walked forward. The gallery turned like sunflowers tracking dawn. Your Honor, the FBI has warrants for Miss Hartwell's arrest on conspiracy, bribery, and federal racketeering charges. Chaos erupted. Cameras flashed like lightning. Reporters shouted questions. Vivian's face went white as courthouse marble. Sheriff Martinez approached with handcuffs that clicked like destiny, arriving precisely on schedule. Furthermore, Agent Chen announced over the pandemonium, we're seizing all HOA assets pending wire fraud and money laundering investigations. Judge Williams' gavel thundered through the chamber. Order! This court finds the 1924 Agricultural Covenant valid and enforceable. Defendant must cease construction immediately and restore damaged property at full expense. As they led Vivian away in handcuffs, her designer heels no longer clicking confidence but scraping defeat across marble, she turned with pure venom. This isn't over, cowboy! I stood up, tipped my hat, and delivered the line I'd been saving for 6 months. Lady, you just got schooled by a dumb old cowboy with a century-old piece of paper. I'd say it's plenty over. The courtroom erupted in applause that sounded like thunder rolling across Texas plains. The courthouse steps felt like walking out of a hurricane into sunshine. Camera crews swarmed like bees on honeysuckle, but for the first time in months, the attention felt sweet instead of suffocating. The smell of autumn leaves mixed with diesel exhaust from news trucks created a perfume of victory I'll treasure forever. Linda Martinez caught me first. Mr. Mitchell, how does it feel to win the biggest agricultural rights case in Texas history? Looking into that camera, thinking about Thunder's empty pasture, I spoke from the heart. Feels like justice finally remembered her home address. The immediate aftermath was sweeter than Sarah's prize-winning apple pie. Judge Williams awarded me $125,000 in damages, enough to pay medical bills, replace those century-old trees, and fund the Thunder Memorial Scholarship. But watching Vivian's empire collapse was priceless entertainment. The HOA faced instant bankruptcy. Insurance companies fled faster than cats from a dog convention. The construction company's liens meant every house entered foreclosure. Residents who'd trusted Vivian watched their equity evaporate like morning dew in August heat. Within days, new HOA leadership emerged with genuine apologies and open checkbooks. They voted unanimously to abandon all legal action and establish a restoration fund. The sweet smell of cooperation replaced the stench of corruption. Vivian pled guilty to conspiracy, bribery, and wire fraud. 18 months probation, $50,000 restitution, permanent disbarment, and 200 hours community service on organic farms. Poetic justice that made my morning coffee taste like liquid gold. Last I heard, she's back in California working as a paralegal for $15 an hour, driving a decade-old Honda after her Tesla got repossessed. From HOA queen to minimum wage, sometimes karma has a sense of humor, but personal revenge paled compared to broader impact. The Agricultural Defense Coalition grew to 2,000 members statewide, protecting 47 family farms from corporate harassment. My kitchen table strategy sessions became a movement saving agricultural heritage across Texas. The state legislature passed the Mitchell Agricultural Heritage Protection Act 6 months later, making fraudulent land grabs a felony. The governor signed it right here on my ranch, with Thunder's memorial gleaming in background sunlight and restored pastures perfuming the afternoon air. Sarah's garden now grows where Vivian tried to build her illegal road. We raise vegetables for food banks, teach sustainable agriculture to school kids, and host property rights workshops. Children's laughter replaced bulldozer engines, fresh soil conquered diesel fumes. Thunder's bronze memorial sits in the garden's heart, surrounded by wildflowers blooming where asphalt once scarred the earth. Kids learn to ride in the same pasture where my prize bull grazed, and every lesson includes the story of fighting corruption and winning. The Thunder Memorial Scholarship has sent 14 students to agricultural law school. Melody graduated top of her class and joined Professor Gutierrez's firm, already winning 6 cases using our precedents. She's protecting family farms from Houston to El Paso. Our annual Thunder Memorial Rodeo draws 5,000 visitors for barbecue, bull riding, and legal education. Part county fair, part law school, all Texas pride. The events become legendary for celebrating agricultural heritage while teaching property rights. Personal healing took time but ran deep. The empty ache of losing Sarah and Thunder gradually filled with purpose bigger than grief. Fighting for this land taught me some battles are worth everything, and winning creates legacies outlasting individual lifetimes. Last month, my granddaughter took her first riding lesson on a gentle mare named Justice. Watching her learn responsibility in the same pasture where 3 generations of Mitchells grew up, I finally understood Grandpa's words about land being more than dirt. Today, I sit on the porch where Vivian once clicked threats and ultimatums. Evening air carries sounds of cattle settling, children playing in Sarah's garden, and honest work by honest people. No diesel engines, no construction equipment, no lawyers with lawsuits, just peaceful sounds of a working ranch where justice came home to roost. Remember, documentation beats intimidation, patience beats panic, and sometimes the best strategy is letting enemies destroy themselves while you build something beautiful from the wreckage. Drop your worst HOA nightmare stories in the comments. I read every one. Share this with anyone fighting corporate bullies because knowledge is the best weapon against corruption. Hit subscribe to Karen Stories for more tales where the little guy wins and justice prevails. Next week, how a retired teacher destroyed a predatory nursing home with one brilliant insurance trick that saved her entire town. Keep fighting the good fight. Sometimes all it takes is one stubborn cowboy with the right paperwork to change everything.